Hello, guys. How you guys doing? Can you guys hear me? Hello. Hello.
We're here, sir. We're here.
Ah, one person is here.
Good morning, sir. Could I ask a quick
Oh,
question? Quick question.
yeah, sure.
I see you putting the grade some of the checkpoints, but I don't see my grade for checkpoint two, and I handed it in like maybe a month ago. I just wanted to know if you got it.
Checkpoint two. All right. I didn't. Okay. I don't think I went back to two. Um, sure. I will check on it. That's actually one of our reasons, one of our objectives for class today, apart from finishing up what we would have done last week, is to check on is for everyone to check to make sure everything is cool with their information, their records, is the right ID numbers, things like that, because today is the last class. Can you believe it? We're at the end. And
Sir,
yet,
sorry. Sir, I have a question. That checkpoint where we're supposed to do the render of the cabin, when is that due?
the render of the major project.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been due more than likely already. In terms of the new date for it to be due, what I just have one major date that I'm personally using because, as you know, most of the late handling has been not used anymore for this semester.
Right.
So, however, you do have to hand in before the grade's supposed to go in. So a good benchmark to use for that is by time exams finish, because usually when exams finish, the university gives you about a week, a day or two, and then you have to hand in all the grades. The new
Okay.
date for exams is the 19th, meaning on the 19th, that's the last day of like I literally have exams. That's the new date since Melissa. So that has been extended, I think, a week from when it usually is, right?
Right.
So I
Um,
would say get everything to me no later than that date. Um, for fear of your grade not being uploaded to the portal.
okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, man. Well, there was another question?
Sir,
No.
I had my hand raised.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Um,
right. What's the question?
I have a test to do this morning for another course. I may
Sure.
go and step back in. I just wanted to make sure that if I do that, that everything is going to be recorded and uploaded today, so I can do it today.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Today is part two of um the studio-based project for us, which was rendering your kitchen in Twinmotion. We started it last week, but remember we gave you guys the time because you guys had studio the following day. So the deal was we would just move it to this class, right? So yes, that will be recorded and uploaded.
Oh,
Also,
thank you.
Right. Also, we have a short tutorial on animating your building in Twinmotion, which is really simple. That one is just making images move. Because for checkpoint, the last checkpoint, you're required to do a 360, right? Which is, as I said, guys, terribly, terribly easy, terribly easy. The hardest part of the major project we had already passed, which is the checkpoint 3, which is to actually finish the building. All right. All right.
Last
Sir, I
thing,
have
just
a
to confirm
question.
something.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
I don't know who was talking, but they can go ahead.
Oh, right.
Oh, okay, I was asking. So I just came, I came in the middle of you talking about when to hand in everything by.
Yeah, the
Um,
19th.
yeah, so if it's a case where we're not seeing any grades for probably some of the previous checkpoints, should we not be worried or should I still follow that up with you?
No, don't be worried because
Oh,
when I marked last week, I think I only marked checkpoint 3 onward. I didn't go back to 2 and 1, which usually we don't go back so far, but you know, all the rules are up in the air because I'm Elisa. So I'm going to be going back and marking those to see if there are any other submissions. I'll go ahead and mark those.
all right, so everything by the 19th just to be safe.
Right, right. So meaning I need to get everything by the 19th in
Mhm.
order to finish marking whatever I don't mark. But
Okay.
whatever has been there from earlier and hasn't been marked, sure. I would say between now and the 19th, or probably I just wait till the 19th and just mark everything. It depends. All
All right,
right.
so
Right. But everything that y'all submitted to me, I think I had marked them starting from checkpoint 3 and onward. So you can get an idea of where you stand with everything. Remember, if you're not seeing your ID, let me know. If you're not seeing your name, let me know, because after today, right? Of course, you can always reach out to me by mail or email. All right. So we have those 2 things to get through today. I don't know if we can get through both of them in one class. If we can, then we probably just have to do this one session. The other objective of today's class is we also do a kind of a module review at the end of the module, but let's go through the tutorial first and then we do the module review. All right. All right. Now, if you have, by the way, how are you guys with Studio? Do most of you, anybody here have your apartment in Revit? You have the plan? Give me a thumbs up, those who have the plan.
the plan?
Yeah, like that's the plan of your unit or, you know?
Something like that.
What about everybody else? I mean, didn't you have interim? I mean,
Yeah, but I guess we will be making changes, so it's not really the same thing anymore.
oh, right. That, which is fine, But if you have a plan, that's at least good because you can kind of follow along with the tutorial today in Twinmotion, right? So last week we created the kitchen in Revit and we took a look at how we do how even we can do drawings, internal elevations, that kind of stuff. Then we went to SketchUp to add details to the kitchen, right? Those fine details and so forth. which I think is a great workflow. Now we're going to be moving from SketchUp and into Twinmotion. That's what we're going to do for today's class. All right, guys. And we're also going to look at how we can get the 3D floor plan while we're in Twinmotion as well. So it's going to be pretty cool stuff. So if you have your plan, you can open, by the way, if you have your plan, my workflow is to go through SketchUp to add finer detailing that is much more tricky to add in Revit. If you want to follow along, you could export, sorry, you could export your unit as a IFC, open it in SketchUp, and then continue from there, right? You don't have to add in any details if you haven't done that already. You can also link it directly into Twinmotion, but I don't know if you realize, let me just show you this. I open Twinmotion, and open SketchUp, and open Revit.
So if you take a look.
Right. So if you look at this here, oops, what happened? All right. If you take a look here,
start to set up our lighting. Now, before we go into moving into starting rendering in Twinmotion, I wanted to just take a look at where we're coming from. So on the left is our original Revit model that we have enhanced.
Actually on the right.
Details in SketchUp. And this is the original SketchUp model. So you can see that we've added way more details. If I zoom into here versus zooming into here, we can see that let me pull this back. So the typical Revit blocks is not as detailed as when we come into SketchUp and we can add more refinement.
Right, guys. So you guys are seeing the difference here, right? With all of the objects that you get in Revit, they are pretty much just placeholders and used, you know, just to have a 2D representation to show dimensions in your plans and all of that, right? But it's not going to be as refined. And one of the first key things, if you remember when we went through those slides where we learned about interior and interior renderings, what makes or breaks your rendering, apart from the lighting, is the details, right? So you can see all of those little extra details in the cupboard doors, the detail in the roof, the detail in the sink, the stove, the fridge type. Those things help to make your renderings more complete. And it's not like you're just making up these details. Everything that we did in our tutorial last time was based on our design board, right? If you remember here, we started from a design board where we chose things like materials and color and all of this stuff. And those are what we used to determine how we added details, those fine details. And most of those fine details, we didn't have to model them from scratch. If you remember, we got most of them from 3D Warehouse, from SketchUp 3D Warehouse. So You can go a long way by carrying your, if you need to do interior renderings, by carrying your model through SketchUp, giving it a little overhaul in terms of refining your details, and then moving into Twinmotion. All right. So let's jump into Twinmotion now.
Okay, so we are gonna fire up Twinmotion, and this is what we see when we open up Twinmotion. Now, this won't be a tutorial on using Twinmotion as a beginner. It's going to be more of, okay, we perhaps know our way around basic Twinmotion. So how do we set up the lighting? What's a good approach for us to set up the lighting? So we're going to do that. We're going to focus on that. So when we open up Twinmotion, this is what we see. And we are going to just close this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this side by side. So let's put Twinmotion here and let's put SketchUp over here. Right? So let's put SketchUp here. Let's minimize that. So we have SketchUp here. And so far we've gone from Revit into SketchUp, and then we've added additional details in SketchUp. And now we're going to go over to Twinmotion. Now, what we need to do is in Twinmotion, we're going to establish a live link between Twinmotion and SketchUp, because we are not quite done in SketchUp yet, but we want to start to see how everything will look in Twinmotion. So what we're going to do, let's turn off the library settings. Let's turn off scene. I'm going to carry this over some more so we can see it better, right? And I'm going to put SketchUp a little bit more over there. All right, cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to establish a link between SketchUp and Twinmotion. So turn off properties. So all I have is the viewport. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of these objects here. So I'm going to go into scene. I'm going to get rid of all of these items, and I'm going to leave the starting ground. All right. So now we need to go to import, hit the plus. And this time we're going to head over to direct link. And notice direct link is telling us that we have a SketchUp scene open. So let's look at the options. We're going to say full precision, normals. We're going to leave everything as default. This just gives us a little bit more accuracy with materials. So this doesn't even necessarily matter, because we're not going to be using the SketchUp materials anyway. So I'm going to leave this like that and choose import. You'll notice that you see the SketchUp model import. So if I go here, you'll notice that you see the kitchen. Now, a cool feature with Twinmotion is that if I head over to SketchUp and I'm going to go to extensions, Datasmith, and I'm going to ensure that I have toggle auto sync on, right? And I'm going to make sure I click sync so that these two are on right there. Now, we can actually sync the views between these two automatically. We're going to go up here to camera. Let's turn off scene. So we're going to go up here to the camera, and then we're going to say we want to synchronize with this viewport camera. So we're going to click that, and then notice our viewports are going to be synchronized. So if I move in SketchUp, Twinmotion will move as well. Now,
by the way, this feature is only available in Twinmotion 2025. So if you have an earlier version of Twinmotion, you will still have the sync feature, but just the cameras won't be synced, which doesn't matter at the end of the day, really, but just so you know.
This is just a help bar that gives you an idea of how to control Twinmotion. Is WD and using the mouse, but we're going to turn this off, right? So we can get some more space. All right, great. So we are now fully in. We have now fully synchronized Twinmotion and SketchUp. So as you can see, our materials aren't exactly set up yet. So we're going to start to edit some of these materials in Twinmotion, and we're going to do it based on what we have on our design board that's here. So we're going to put the design board over here, right? And then we're going to refer to it for these colors. Now, before we get that set up, we need to get our lighting fixed. So let us work on getting our lighting fixed, and then we can start to look into setting up the materials. Now, some things to remember. Twinmotion has 3 rendering engines. So if I head over to properties, if I head over to scene gives us a list of all the objects in our scene. Now, one of the objects that in our scene is our scene itself. So all of these are individual objects. So if I click on an object here, it will highlight a component here. And at the top of this object list, if I scroll all the way to the top, then at the top of this is our ambience. So our ambience represents think of it as an object that represents the scene. Think of it as, right now we have lights outside our scene, and if we wanted to edit the light, we would need to click on it. However, we can't physically click on a light, this environment that's outside. We can't click on it. We can't click on the sun. It's not an object that we can click on. But the ambience in our listing of objects represents the light. So if I click on ambience, and I'm going to bring up the properties tab, this is the properties of ambience. Now I'm going to hit this little button right here, and that's going to take the ambience to the side. So again, if I, for example, click on this wall, then my properties panel is going to show me some properties for this wall. If I click on this floor here, then these are the properties for the floor. Now I could have also clicked the wall in my outliner here, or my scene graph rather, and every object I click, notice it gives me different properties. Now you can't really change these properties, they just contain metadata that's perhaps coming from the program you're linking from. However, I can also click on my ambience, and my ambience is what allows me to control the environment light. So I'm going to click ambience, go over to render, and here you see I have 2 render engines, 2 categories of render: real time, and notice real time is currently enabled, and then I have path trace. So if I click on path trace, then notice that my scene changes to rendering using the path trace. I'm going to click back real time, and now I'm back to real time. Now notice that when I click on these 2, what happens down here? So if I click on path trace, all my settings down here change to options relating to path trace, and if I click on real time, then all the options down here changes to the options for real time. So under real time, I have 2 global illumination setups. One is for standard, which it's on now, and the other one is lumen. So I'm going to choose lumen because it's a bit more accurate. I'm going to leave it on real time. All right. So if I switch between the 2, standard, lumen, standard, lumen. So you can see lumen gives you a bit more detail. So the first thing we want to do is choose lumen. Now, lighting and materials go hand in hand. So some of the colors that we see here is actually affecting our lighting. The fact that the walls are gray and white, all of these things affect the lighting. So whenever we are setting up lighting for a scene, we want to set up 3 different types of light. Firstly, we have our indirect light. Think of this as your environment light. It's the light coming from the sun, from your environment. Next, you have your direct light, right? And our direct light is going to be any, like our sunlight that comes directly in. So the first light is our indirect light, which is our environment, which is kind of like the sky, the fact that it's daytime, you have light bouncing outside. And our direct light is sunlight, any light that directly hits a surface. And the last type of light we have is going to be our artificial light. And that's going to be light that comes from our lighting fixtures. So what we want to do whenever we're setting up our lighting is we want to set up all three of these one at a time. Now, as a good practice, what I normally do when setting up my lighting, because I know that my light is affected by materials. So for example, if I had a big red box in here, everything would look red. What I normally do is I'm going to go back to ambience. I'm going to go to effects and I'm going to go to clear render and I'm going to say enable and change it to white. So I'm going to say 255, 255, 255. Right, so this is going to be white. And you might be saying, why do this? And the reason for this is that now everything is white. So another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say, I don't want to affect anything that's glass. So now my glass is not white. But now everything in the scene is white. So if I go outside, notice that even the ground is white. And what I want to do is I want to go back here and I want to change this to be maybe more gray. So I'm going to put it somewhere. I'm going to put it somewhere in this gray region. That's right here. And what that is doing for me, it is just making everything one tone, which makes it much easier to get things set up. So by making everything white, I don't have to worry about the different materials just yet because I'm not ready to apply materials. Right now, I just want to set up my lighting. All right, the next thing, so I want to go to environment and I want to choose a environment. So I'm going to go over to HDR. Notice everything kind of goes black. And what I want to do is choose an HDR image to use. So by default, I have this one. And then what you notice is that you can turn up or down the intensity of the HDR. And what HDR is it's an environment. So here, if I turn this all the way up, you can start to see the environment light up there. And one of the reasons why it's so dark is because if I go over to camera, our auto exposure is off. So your auto exposure might be on by default. So it might look like this, right? However, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off auto exposure. And then we're going to put the exposure to a value of, let's try 1. So turn off auto exposure, put it to a value of 1. Let's go back inside. Let's go back to environment. Our environment is on 100, which is a bit much. So we're going to put it to about 50. And that will give us like a balanced environment. Now notice my Twinmotion scene is saving, and that is autosave. I think it's a good idea to enable autosave. So to do that, go to edit and go to preferences. And what you'll notice is autosave is off by default. So you need to go ahead and check that and it will save it into your My Documents. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save my scene. All right, so now we're starting to set up our lighting where it's a little bit balanced. So we're going down the list and right now we're setting up our environment light. So we've chosen a background. Everything is still kind of gray, but that's fine. We just need to keep it gray so we can set up the background. So next we want to turn on our direction light. And right now our direction light is matching our HDR backdrop. So that means if we rotate the backdrop, notice that our shadows rotate as well, because it is matching the direction of the sun. However, when we're inside, we don't need to worry too much about that. So we're going to turn off match HDR and we're going to set up our own sun. So what we want to do is to have the sunlight maybe coming through some of the windows. So adjust this, maybe something like that, maybe something like that. So where we have some sunlight coming in to the building. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to head over to effects. We're going to turn translucency all the way down, right? And we're going to maybe turn up the color. This is going to be the clay color. Let's put it all the way to white. There we go. So remember, what this does is it colors everything in white. And we're doing that because we just want to
Sure.
be able to see what our
Sure.
scene looks.
So when I put on the clear render, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you see how your windows are transparent, mine are not transparent.
Right. You have to check this tag right
Oh,
here
glass.
under
Okay.
details. And the
Okay.
glass will become unaffected by the clear render. All right.
Like with our lighting, because if this wasn't on, everything would be different materials, and we want to just set up our lighting with the materials set to all white, maybe not all white, maybe a little gray, just to see what the scene looks like. So here we go. So now what we can do is let's go into our environment, and we can actually turn up or down the intensity of the sun that's coming in, and we can take it higher than this, so we can maybe go 150. We can also bring up the intensity of the exterior. So if the sun were 0, all of the light that we're seeing now is just coming from the exterior. So this is what you call the indirect light. This is just light coming from the exterior. So usually you want to get this to be, so like 200, right? And we can see that that light is mainly blue because it's coming from the sky and it's reflecting from the ground, and that's why it ends up being blue. Now we can actually go in and tweak the amount of contribution of lighting effects, and we can tweak the intensity of this light. But pretty much this light is being driven by whatever sky atmosphere is selected, and because it's blue, that's why most of it is blue. So this is indirect light. Now if we turn on our direct light, then notice that that is the sun that is, go back, right? If we turn on our direct light, increasing our intensity, that is the sun that is now coming in. So let's make that 150. All right, and we can see that we're now getting some balanced lighting. So we have two types of light here now. We have our indirect light and our direct light. Now we are going to have some artificial lights. So for example, we're going to have some lights up here to match our image. But pretty much this helps us to get to a good place with our default lighting. So now that we have the lighting somewhat balanced, we're going to switch off go over to effects, and we're going to switch off clear render. So now we're back to our materials. Now one of the reasons why everything went dark is because this material is actually dark, right? So what we're going to do is first let us add a material for the outside. So we're going to head over to materials library, and we're going to go to vegetation. Let's go to grass. Hold on, no, let's go to materials, then we go to 3D grass, and we're going to add some 3D grass to the ground. That's here. So we have nice 3D grass there. So when we look on the outside, we can start to see 3D grass that's there. All right, next what we want to do is start adding materials to the countertop. So we know that we wanted to have a marble material. So we're going to head over to materials and marble. There we go. And we're going to look for one that matches. So maybe it's quite a bit of choices. We're going to choose maybe one of these. Yes, this one goes much better. So remember, we are matching this here. Now notice we have a backsplash that is around here, but we didn't model any backsplash in Revit. So we're actually going to do that in SketchUp here. And remember, we have these two linked. So when I rotate one, this will also rotate. So we're going to have that. We're going to create a group from it, and then we're going to extrude it like 10 millimeters. And we're also going to do here. And extrude this upward. All right, there we go. So we're gonna now add the rest of this and just draw this as a new shape. And we're gonna make that also 10 and make that 10 millimeter as well. We're gonna carry this all the way down. And we're gonna add another one over here into a group. All right, so now back in Twinmotion, we can apply material to that. So I'm going to flip at this guy here. Now what's happening now is that this material is the same material here. So I would need to change this to apply to object. And that way it will only apply to a single object. All right, that's great stuff. Now we do want to complement the cut here. We need to change this material as well. Now we did have gold plated metals throughout the design. So for example, the faucet would be gold. So we're gonna head over to metals. Here we have brass, gold. Oh, we need to download it first. Then some other elements was gold, like for example, we could make the stove stainless steel. Now the reason these aren't showing nicely is because there is no light. So what we're going to do, go to materials, over to here. We're going to do the same thing to here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is if we go ahead back to our design board here, we want to start to add in our artificial lights. So we have two lights here and then we wanted to have a light kind of like this, right? So let's find some recessed light. So if we search for recessed light, and we can download this. And let's bring up our SketchUp scene here. And there we go. Let's make this bigger. So as we add objects here, back over in Twinmotion here, let's turn these off. All right. We can see that. Let's put this up. Okay, so there we go. We just copied it and pasted it up top. So we can see that Twinmotion is mirroring everything that we're doing here. So we're gonna copy this over like this. And we're just eyeballing it for now. And we're gonna copy a couple of these. Let's put them a little bit further apart. So 1300. Copy this again, 1300. Here we go. All right, now we're going to look for the lamps that would go here. So we're going to head back over to Marketplace. And I think this one looks great. So let's download this one. There we go. And we're going to move this in place up here. This might actually be a little too big. Yeah, it's a little too big, but we'll make it smaller. There we go. All right, that's good. And we're gonna put one on the other side. Right, not exactly the same lamps, but the concept is similar. So there they are. I would actually modify these and I would make them a little bit longer, maybe this end. All right. Okay, so I think that's fine as it's now. All right, let's now work some more on materials, because in here the walls are very dark. So we're gonna take a look on our color scheme and be back in Twinmotion now, and then we can start adding some artificial lights. So if we look back on our color scheme here, we can see that we're using these colors that are here. So the wall, we're going to make the wall this light color that's here. So we're going to head to materials, and now let's head to library, materials, and let's look for wall coverings, and let's look for maybe this plaster coating. That's good. We're going to download this one and we're going to apply it to the walls. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this one where it should replace all wall materials. So notice it's in here is starting to get a little brighter because we're using a brighter color wall. All right, now what we're going to start doing is we're going to start placing some artificial lights. So let's go back to here. We're going to go to lights and we're going to use some of these spotlights here. Let's try this one, drop that right there. All right, now we're going to make this a little smaller. So let's bring up our properties and we're going to turn on the intensity, maybe 100, and then we're going to take down the attenuation like that. Increase the cone angle a little bit. Let's carry up the attenuation. Right. All right, that's good. Now if we go back over here to, let's turn off properties, go to scene, you can see that the lights are down here. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. I'm going to just press home, and what I'm going to do is minimize this. So this untitled one, this is actually our SketchUp model. I'm going to rename it SketchUp Kitchen, and then this is our lights that are here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and copy this over here, and then we're going to make it an instance, so that way when we change one, the other one will also change. Now another thing that we're going to do is for these areas here, we're going to change this material inside to a light material. So let's go to library, materials, and go to neons and neon 01. We're going to drag that over. We need to download it first, then drag it over. There we go. There we go. We're also going to do that here. Now, instead of dragging from here, what I want us to do is drag from down here, because if we drag from here, it will repeat as a different material. Okay, let me see, neon 2. Let me see which one of these looks better. No, this one is fine. So what's happening here is that we have dragged the gold many times from over here. So what we need to do is we need to reapply this material to these elements. Notice that when we reapply it now, these don't have the little check marks again. So this double check mark is saying that it's applied to many objects. So this one here is applied to, if I want to know what object this is applied to, I can go to properties and then I can go to assign and I can click here and it will highlight the object. So it's applied to this object. So all I have to do now is we're going to replace that with this one. There we go. And then what we're going to do is just clean up. We're going to click this little guy here. Let's close these. We're going to click this and it will just delete all our unused materials. We still have this one that's applied, so this is doubled up. So let's click on this, go to properties and see it's applied to this object. We still have two here. Oh, it's still applied to this object. So there we go. And this one, there we go. So now we can clean this up. So now we just have one gold. All right, so we're going to apply this gold here and we're going to apply it to the ceiling as well. All right, great. So now we're going to grab these lights and we're going to duplicate it and we're going to duplicate it. All right, so notice our kitchen has become more illuminated. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to apply some additional artificial lights, but this time we're going to apply some artificial light boosters. And what that means is we want to boost the light that's coming through the window here so that when it hits inside it will be a bit brighter, right? So for example, if we look at our scene here, all of these lights that we added, we're going to put them in a folder. So we're going to say move to new container and we're going to call this lights. So if we turn this off, that is just the daylight coming in. If we turn it on, that's like turning on the kitchen lights. So we're going to turn it off and then we're going to add some light boosters here. And how we do that is we're going to go to library and go over to lights, and we're going to add a area light. I'm going to drag that out. I don't know if you can see it. That's that area light there. And you can see the square box. That is the area that the light is being applied. So we're going to go to the area light properties and we're going to make it smaller. So there you go. You can see it there. And what we're going to do is I'm pressing tab to rotate 90 degrees. We're going to go down. And what we're doing is we want to shine light through this glass here. So I'm going to increase the width and the length. So what I'm doing is shining light through that glass, and I'm going to increase the attenuation. I want to shine it all the way to this wall that's there. Now I'm going to increase the intensity, and that represents light coming through there. So I don't want to make it too bright. That is good enough. I'm going to enable shadows as well, or well, we don't need to. No, we're not going to. Let's turn off shadows because we just need to boost the light just a little. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this on this side here. So now we have light coming through this side. There you go. So we have these two lights here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make these lights a bit more on the cooler side, since it's light coming from outside, which is going to be more blue. All right, we're going to put this in a folder and we're going to call it light boosters. We also have some lights coming through here. So we're going to put this here, but this time we're not going to instance it. We have to copy it because we need to change the width of these lights and the length. All right, so now we have additional lights. So you can see now that, hold on, let's cut these and paste them in light boosters. So if we turn off light boosters, this is what our place look like without them. This is it with it. So we can actually go in and let's put it to about 100, and let's make sure the color is in the blues, somewhere like that. There we go. So we don't need it to be very bright. We just need it to boost the light a little. Because remember, we now have to turn on our artificial lights as well. So you can see the place is becoming more illuminated with these types of lights. Okay, now let's work on the color of our cabinets that we have here. So if we look back here, we can see that we have that the colors of our cabinets, our lower cabinets, is going to be this green color. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to materials, no, not materials, library, materials, and let's use, the closest thing is perhaps plastics. I think we could use plastics, or yeah, I think plastics would be the best thing because it's kind of shiny. And this is linoleum, styrofoam. So we could just grab one of these glossy plastic colors and modify it from red. So let's drag this over here. Well, let me undo that. We want to change it to apply to an object, so that way it only applies to one. All right, so now what we want to do is to go to properties here, and we want to try to match the color here to this color that's there. Now a good way that we can match this color here, rather than trying to guess it from here, we could go to imagecolorpicker.com, and we have an on-screen picker that's right here. So we could go here and say pick from screen, and then we could hover over maybe a section of our image like here, and then it gives us the hex code here. So we could copy this code and then place it here. We don't need the hashtag. There we go. Now when it gives you, it might be a little bit darker than what you have, so we can go in and we can tweak that a bit more. So maybe it would be a bit closer to green, maybe lighter, maybe something like that. All right, so let's go down to our materials now, and let's apply that to the other areas. It looks like it should be a little lighter, but it could also be that in here is not as bright. So let's apply this to the other locations. Right here. Here we have to delete these objects from SketchUp, so let's go back to SketchUp here. We need to explode that. And one thing you have to remember that you still have to save this file, and you still have to save the Twinmotion file, because even though it's syncing, it's not saving, and you don't want to end up in a situation where you lose anything from not saving. All right, now this here would be, I believe we had a golden sink. No, it's actually a white, kind of like marble sink. So let's go back here. Let's go back to library. Go back to materials. Let's look all the way down. Yes, let's try this one. Drag it out here. And let's go to materials here and for that one. So that's going to be our marble sink. And we can see we have some reflections happening in there. All right, let's continue. We could extend this cupboard on this side. So back over to SketchUp here and extend this maybe about 2 inches. Maybe not so much. Yeah. All right, that's fine. All right, so we need to do the top now. So let's take a look on our board. And the board we have mainly like a cream kind of a off-white color. So we're going to duplicate. And the reason how you know which one is the original is the one with the double tick, because that means that it has been applied to many objects, right? So this is the other one. So we are gonna, let's rename it and call it cupboard upper. There we go. All right, and what we're gonna do now is let's go over to properties, and we want to try and get a color like this. Now we can just go to white, which we know is 255, 255, 255, and then work our way to a kind of cream. So maybe more to here. So maybe something like that. All right, so let's apply that to our upper cabinets. All right, now this is a little too cream, so maybe we need to put back some white in that color. So we can go closer to white. Maybe like that. And the other reason is that this is actually absorbing some of the light color here. So this light color here is a little bit on the warm side. So we could carry it to a bit on the cool side. Though interior lights tend to be a little warm, so maybe we should not go all the way. No? All right. These are looking a little pink, like a pink color. So let's get this material. So what we can do is, apart from editing this color, okay, let's see if we can change the color picker. There we go. So it's now closer to the center. There we go. All right, so let's apply that over these locations, and we're also going to apply that to the top. Oh, this needs to get the wall color. Actually, maybe this kind of looks nice in this kind of highlight wall. Maybe it should be the same as here. And oops, not that one. Let's grab this material, put it up here. All right, lovely. Now as for our window, we're going to make it pretty much the same white color. If we look here, we have everything kind of white. So we are gonna go to materials, and so this is the cupboard upper. We're still going to duplicate this and call this window. So that's this one, just in case we want to change it later. We're going to just enable replace material, so that way it will replace all this material. Then we are going to head over to library and go to materials, glass, and we're going to try one of this, maybe clear glass. There we go. I think that should replace all glass, I think. Let's see. What material does this have? Oh, yeah. So we can see that this is applied to all of these objects. All right, lovely. This needs to be a metal, so let's change that. So let's go to materials, metal. And we'll make this a kind of a dark. Oh, we need to download it first. This one, coated. Well, let's head over here and modify that, and let's make it a little darker. That's better. All right, so this is coming together nicely, and let's look back at our reference. I think it's mostly there. The green is a little bright, so we are going to let it be a little lighter. I think like that. All right, let's also change the material on this bridge. So let's get an aluminum. Actually, I think we have one already for the stove. because we're going to let them match. But hold on, we're going to turn on apply to a single object, and let's go into the properties for this, and let's decrease the roughness, which would make it a little bit more shiny. Let's let it be a little lighter so it looks a little closer to stainless steel. All right, so we're going to apply that to the fridge. For these elements, we should make it a different kind of metal, so maybe try matte chrome. Let's see if that works. There we go. We can apply maybe the same black from the stove, and let's use the matte. We have two. Okay, let's use the matte chrome for this one. Let's delete that one. And for the matte chrome, we could decrease the roughness a little bit to make it a little shiny. So it's a little shiny there. Let's apply it here, and let's apply the brushed inside here. Apply the matte chrome here. Back of our stove, we can apply the matte chrome here and here and here. Right, so both these equipments are matching. There we go. Okay, we're gonna save. Okay, so let's take a look back on our reference image here. Yes, we did add this element. We added the different colors. Okay, now let's add the floor tile. So let's go to here and open the materials. Under tiles, sandstone might be what we want. Let's see. Of course, this is too small, so we're going to head over to the material properties, and we're going to increase the size. So I have a UV, increase the size, maybe like 100. Okay, there we go. So this is a sandstone material, which is a little dark. It looks similar, but a little dark, so we can actually tweak this. So let's go here, and well, it's already the lightest, so we can add some luminosity to it. I think this has some amount. Let's add some more. It has a little bit of reddish pink in there, so we're going to add that in, and it's still brighter, so we can't push this beyond that amount, so that's fine. Next, we need to add some transparency. So not transparency, some roughness. So this is a little bit shiny. All right, okay, that is looking better. I think it would be good for, we need to replace some of these models with more high detail models. So we can use, we have the option of using models from SketchUp. So we could replace the door in SketchUp, or we could replace the door in Twinmotion, right? Twinmotion has its own doors. So if we want the doors to be interactive, so let's see what that is like. If we go over to objects, doors, rotating doors, we have all these doors here. These are the single doors. So for example, this is a nice door. So we could grab this one. There we go. And we see that it's opening. And what happens is that when you go in this circle, it will open like that. Of course, I can go over to properties, and I can say for the behavior, for it to close. Then I can also change the material. So for example, this frame material here, I can grab it and drop that over here. Oops, drop that on here. Actually, I need to do this. Doing that applies to the whole thing. So let's do this one. There we go. And for the door, we could leave it in black. Right now, it's this color. So make it a little lighter. There we go. Then what we would do is move the door in place here, and we would remove this door here. Now we can either delete it from here, or we can delete it from SketchUp. So if we click on this object here, we go into scene, we can see that that is the door there. So we can turn it off, and then we have the door here. And then what we do now is head over to properties for the door and increase the height and increase the width. That's fine. And now we have our door like that. Now we have some other spaces like around here, but the camera isn't going to be going around here. But we still want to apply materials here so that it will bounce light nicely from that area. Let's replace these materials as well. Right, and that will just make inside here that much brighter. Notice from you do that inside here is a bit brighter. I think this is a nice feature wall. Now let's put in that color. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. All right, so let's head back over to here. Now what we want to start to add in is some decor, right? So if we look at some of the decors that are here, So we can now go into objects, home, kitchen, accessories, and we can start to add some of these elements in. So for example, we can add in some of these plates, and we can start to really detail this area out. Now we could, if for example, this is a little bit small, these require smaller plates, so we are just gonna change the scale like that. Put this one over. Now for decor, it's really about setting the environment, so we don't have to detail these as much. We just need to be able to hint it in the background. So now we can go over into SketchUp, and we could actually start to put in some shelving here. So we'll use the rectangle tool, a rectangle this way. We're gonna group it. Oops, the space is a little bit small. There, move it. There we go. So we can see that we have some shelves in there now. That's great. And back in Twinmotion, we can start to put some more elements inside. So for example, this guy here. All right, now we also have food. That's here. Now we could probably add this wine glass here, right there. Cool. And we could actually rotate that. You know, some of the other decors that we have are like vases. So we could head over to living room, plants, and maybe like one of these. Download that there. Maybe there. Maybe this would be more suited for on this side. That's right here. Now, some other things that we can add is going to be in decorations. So for example, we can add these vases. We can just add this maybe in a corner there. If we head back over to kitchen, the appliance, we have maybe a blender object we can add. Let's download it. I guess these would be objects you would find in a kitchen area. Now, one thing that's missing here is going to be our wall sockets, and we could choose to add those from SketchUp actually. So we could head over to our warehouse and look for wall outlets, electrical. We add these in and we can see them here, and we can see, let's see if we can get this material here, and we can adjust, make it more white. There we go. Now if we look on this side, you might notice that they look weird, but in SketchUp they look fine, and the reason for that is because these polygons are flipped. So a quick way to fix that is if you get the material, so that's this material here, and we go over to miscellaneous and we enable two-sided, sorry, not X-ray, but two-sided, and notice that that fixes the problem there. So now they're fine. Now when I come back here, notice that this door is back, and that's because we have it in sync mode. So I think a good idea would be to remove this door from in SketchUp, and that way they would also be removed from Twinmotion, right? All right, now the other things we can do to further enhance our scene here . Let's maximize this. What we can do is possibly add some elements on the outside to just let outside be a little bit more believable. Now, when we're dealing with interiors, one of the best ways to do that is to use an HDR backdrop. right now we have a sky dome, which is great especially if we want to do exterior animations. But for this purpose, where we're going to be inside, and it's not necessarily going to be animations, we can choose a backdrop. So let's go over to our ambience settings. Let me put that over here, and I'm going to change this to HDR backdrop. And if you notice what the HDR backdrop is, it's basically putting your environment in a kind of a dome. And let's increase the intensity. So from inside, this is what we see. Let's increase the intensity some more. So we get a little bit more realism beyond the glass here. And we can even adjust things like the projection offset, so we can make it more closer to the ground. There we go. All right, so now that we have these set up, what I would do now is most of our images we're going to be generating is going to be of the kitchen area here. But what we want to do is we want to flood this area with some additional lights. So this is going to be an artificial light that we're going to create here. So I'm going to go to library, and I'm going to go to lights, and I'm going to add another area light. Let's go to properties. Let's make it smaller, and let's rotate it. And what we're actually going to do is this is going to be like a fill light. So we're going to kind of angle it a bit like that. And let's make the temperature not so warm. And what's happening here is that in case the camera goes back like this, we don't want here to be too dark. So let's increase the width a bit. So what we're doing is flooding the scene with some light. Think of it as an additional light boost, but this one is just to kind of fill out these areas so that when we take a shot like this, so for example, if we didn't have it, that is what it would look like. So this wall here on the left would be pretty dark. So now when we enable that fill light, it just lightens up the scene, which looks even nicer. All right. Now some additional things we could probably add some decor on this wall. So we're going to choose objects, home, and we're going to go for living room, decorations, and perhaps we could have maybe an image, perhaps an image like this one, or we could maybe have something like this. There we go, on this wall right here. All right, so now we're ready to set up our views. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to media. Let's close this. And this is where we set up the different views. So we're on image, and we're going to add our first view now. And most of this kitchen area is more vertical. So we're going to change the ratio of this image of our view here. So we are going to go to properties and head over to image. And we're going to make this size perhaps 1920 by 1920. So now it's more square. Then we're going to go to camera, and we're going to reduce the focal length, increase the focal length. So maybe about 20. So the more we go to a higher focal length, is the more it will be zoomed in, and somewhat the more realistic it is, because our eyes have a focal length of around 22. So this looks a bit more believable for us. And we're also going to enable here, we're going to enable parallelism, so that way we keep the lines vertical and good. And yeah, I think this will be our first shot. So we have this as image 1. Then we're going to add a second shot, and maybe this one we're going to add a close-up. So maybe for this one we can have something in the foreground, maybe like this bottle that's right here. So we could push this some more. like that, rotate it somewhere like that. And then maybe we could have a view maybe from this way that kind of shows a bit of this area here. And what we can do, if we want to have a view like this, we could make this one a little wider. Now we have to remember, whenever we set up our view, we need to click the little plus to change it each time, right? So this one, okay, let me set back the view. So it said something like that. Then we hit plus and now it updates. All right, so now what we're going to do is we could have this one being a little wider. So we could just put that back to 1920, maybe something like that. Then what we could do is, let's update that shot. We can also go to our camera and we can choose areas of focus. So for example, we could add a depth of field and pick a focus area. So the focus area could be this bottle here, and notice everything here is blurry. Or the focus area could be down here, and notice that the bottle is blurry. And then we can also adjust that focus distance. And we can also adjust the aperture a little bit. And when we adjust the aperture, what we're simply doing is it's gonna allow less light into the camera, but at the same time it will make it less blurry. So once we adjust the aperture, we're gonna have to counteract this with increasing our exposure so that we add more light. So let's say, for example, we wanted to focus on this, or maybe this stove right here. But if we didn't want to have so much blur in the foreground and background of the stove, and we could adjust our distance. Let me see, 2, there we go. And then pick a closer focus point here. But notice how extreme the blurriness is that is here. The only way to reduce that blurriness is that we have to increase our aperture, and then we would have to go over to our exposure, and we would have to increase our exposure as well. So notice now this is less blurry now that we increase our aperture and increase our exposure. So that is just a balance you have to do whenever you want to have something in the foreground and background blurry. So I'm gonna just give myself a little bit more blur. There we go. Right. All right, so we're gonna save this shot here. So now we have this shot here and we have this one. I believe this one here, let's look at our camera. I don't think we had saved it. Oh yes, we did. All right, so probably want to swing back around like this for this shot, like that. Hit this. Now the next shot we want to take is, we're gonna add a plus here to duplicate this one. We want to take a straight on shot of the kitchen like this. And let's increase the focal length so that it's maybe around 34. So I want to have a shot that kind of shows the kitchen like that. Let's pull back a little more. There we go. We're going to save that one. All right, so we have this one that shows more of this side, a center one, and then we have a close-up version. This maybe could be a little brighter. So I'm going to increase the brightness a little bit. Save that. All right, now all three of these are created using the real-time Lumen render engine, right? Now we also have a path tracer render engine as well, and this one will give us even more realistic, we have even more realistic lights and reflection compared to this one. So let's do that now, and we're going to create another set of images using the path tracer. We can even compare them. Okay, so we're going to rename these. So we're going to rename these and we're going to call this kitchen 1, and we're going to put this kitchen 1, we're going to put L_kitchen 1. So the L means that it's a Lumen renderer, so that we can know them separate. For this one, we're going to rename L kitchen 2, rename kitchen 3. All right, so now we're going to duplicate this one here. So we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to call this now P for path tracer. So we're going to change this one now to path tracing. So we're going to click on this, and now we're going to hit path tracer. And what you might notice is that the computer might slow up a bit. You can see that it's now rendering the path trace scene. Now I'm going to change this to low so that this will do it much quicker. And you'll notice that a couple things look different already. Firstly, things are a little bit more darker, and the reason for that is that things are a bit more accurate with the path tracer. So we now have to go in and do some adjustments. Now, what has happened is that when we switch over to path tracing, notice that our environment HDR has reset. So these values are set independently for each shot. So we're going to increase that again. There we go. Now, as I said, this is going to be a low resolution preview, so we won't get the high resolution version as yet, but everything seems okay. Let's try this at 35. All right, so now we're going to duplicate these other views. So we're going to duplicate this one, and then we're going to switch it over to path tracing, and we're going to path tracing medium. Right, then we're going to go to, so you might notice that your computer is moving slower because this is not real time, this is actually rendering. So we need to go back to environment, and we need to put this to 35. All right, good. And save this shot. So far we have two. So we have that one, then we have this one, and this, our final one here, we're going to duplicate that, switch it over to path trace, medium, low. Now we're just putting it on low so that we can use the computer a bit more quicker. This one, I think, could use some additional exposure, or maybe not so much. We can also do some tweaks like local exposure to help to balance the shadows. So for example, I can reduce the impact of the shadow down here because it's a little bit low. Save that. All right, so now that we have the, we need to rename this. So to rename this is a little slow. Okay, rename. So this is P for path trace, and then 1, 2, 3. Oh, we have this duplicated. So rename P. Okay, great. All right, now we have all three views set up. Let's save. Okay, great. So now we have our views using the Lumen render, and then we have the views using the path trace render. So now we're going to set up to render out our views, and to do that we're going to head over to export, and we're going to go to image. We're going to render them as a JPEG, and we're going to hit the plus, and we're going to select all. Just hover away from this part now, and before we export we now need to set the resolution. So for each one of these we are going to go to render, and we want to put them to high. All right, now remember, you have to, so we're going to go here, we're going to put this to high, and we're going to go here and put this to high. So all three of these will be rendering with the highest fidelity. Now we go to export, and it's always a good idea to save right before you export. And we're going to choose export, and it's going to export all of those images, and we are going to choose back the same folder. So we're going to create a folder and call it rendering, and that's it. And the computer will take a little while now to render out the final images, and sometimes they tend to look a little nicer than what you see in the viewport. Okay, great, we're almost there. All right, so what we can do is head to our render folder that is here, and we can see the images already. So this is going to be the render with the Lumen, the real-time engine. So this is the one that's very quick, right? And that is pretty nice. You can see we have some nice details there. Then this is the path trace version of the same thing. Actually, we didn't enable the sun for the path trace version, so we need to go ahead and do that. That's here, and go to environments where we have the sun. We're going to increase, oops, that's too bright. So 50, 100, 200, maybe 300. There we go. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit render here, but we're only going to render just the path traced images. So we're going to hit export and export to the same folder. All right. Okay, so now that it's all done rendering, let's take a look on that other image. All right, here we go. So on the left we have the lumen render, that's the L. On the right, we have the path tracer, which took a little longer, but hopefully to let it get more realistic. And usually the difference is, like, you can, if we zoom in here, you can see the shadow reflection of the handle in the chrome brush metal of the fridge. You can see that it's a little kind of splotchy here and it's much more smoother there, right? If we usually, where the path tracer shines is in terms of reflections, but the lumen render is pretty close. Like, if you notice, the reflections in the path tracer is a little better. Now, at first glance, they pretty much look the same but a little different. Like, you might notice that the gold is a little bit more rich. When it comes to transparency stuff, like for example the glass or anything like that, the lumen render tends to, or should do it a bit more accurate. Not the lumen, the path tracer should do it a bit more accurate. But overall, both these render styles are pretty good. However, the one on the left was almost instant, where the one on the right took maybe about 2 minutes to render. So if we look on the other image here, this is the lumen render, this is the path tracer render, and both of them look really nice, right? Mainly the differences between these two has to do with your scene. So for example, maybe if we were in a scene with a lot of reflections, a lot of mirrors, then we would see a huge difference. But for this scene, it's pretty straightforward. All right, so these are the images that we rendered. So I think it came out pretty good. Okay, so now that we have the images done.
All right, guys. So that is rendering in Twinmotion, which is pretty cool. All right, any questions of Mike? Can you hear me? Yes. Any questions so far, guys?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you didn't use the scenes that they made in SketchUp. You use, like, you made new scenes in Twinmotion.
Right. So because even though you can sync the cameras, it's best that you create the scenes in Twinmotion, right? It's because Twinmotion is your output, you know what I mean? So it's better you set up the scenes there.
All right, sir, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, here rendering. Hold on, I'm just.
Sir, also for the lighting, well, the spotlights you had, were the spotlights from SketchUp, or you use spotlights from Twinmotion?
All from Twinmotion.
Okay.
When you add lights from SketchUp, when you say spotlight, you mean the light itself or the light fixture?
The light fixture itself.
Oh no, it's not this one. It's not that one. Right, the light fixtures were added from SketchUp. And usually this is why I go through SketchUp. I go through SketchUp because you get more options for decor, like lights and lamps and all of those things. You can get them from Warehouse. I mean, Twinmotion does have some decor, but it's very limited. I mean, if you just want something quick and you want it to look nice, then sure. But in our case, we were kind of going from a design board, so we needed very specific stuff, which means we needed a wide array of choices, and we wouldn't have gotten so much choices from Twinmotion. Though, what I would say also is Twinmotion has a crazy amount of objects. I just choose to get them from SketchUp. They're a little bit more, so apart from the default library in Twinmotion, where you have here, you have these two libraries, Megascans and Sketchfab. These two here. And these two libraries is like the wild, wild west of assets. So for example, if I go to Sketchfab, there's too much stuff here to go specifically. So I could search, for example, for planter, and I would find tons of planters. But the things about this is that most of these things, like you can see that they're very, because they're done by, these are all free to use, but it's not necessarily going to be what you're looking for usually. Sometimes they're a little bit stylized, sometimes they're a little cartoony, other times they are too detailed, so it's very wild, right? The other reason, let me go back here. Just opening this file. Here we go. SketchUp. All right. All right, yeah, give this a little while to open. There we go. Right. Right. So sometimes, so for example, when I went and looked for stove and sink and those things, I got more what do I call it? Reasonable reasonable objects from 3D Warehouse. But I was about to say the other reason why I would want to use SketchUp to add in all my objects is because you can actually generate drawings from SketchUp. So for example, if I went to my section tool here, you know, and I cut a section like that, then you know, I could switch the camera to, okay, wait, before I do that, let me deactivate this cut first, and I will save a scene. Let me pin this here. All right, so let me add this scene here. Right, then I will create another scene, so let me activate this, and then I'm going to change my camera to I'll change it to isometric. No, not isometric. Change it to parallel projection, and then I'm going to the right view. No, it's actually the left view. There we go. So we can actually get drawings out, and we can actually put this on like a layout, SketchUp layout, and actually have drawings with all of these nice details that we added as an option. So usually what would happen is that if you're doing a set of construction documentation and you're not doing like kitchen interior design, you're just designing an entire building, then you wouldn't necessarily have to go into this level of detail. This level of detail is for when you're doing an actual interior. So you are specifically detailing the interior of a kitchen, then yeah, you need to go in, you need to show all the little nooks and crannies and everything. But if you're doing the larger documentation, then you don't have to. In you guys, what you guys are doing for your studio project, I don't know if I don't think you're required to do like this level of detail for your delivery. Anybody can tell me? Guys? Who is here?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Right. Exactly. So, but this is a reason why you would want to put your lighting fixtures and everything from SketchUp, because you can end up doing you can use SketchUp later on to get drawings out, which is pretty cool. All right. Okay. So we're going to move on now to the 3D floor plan, right? Here. Done here. Right. So if you guys remember, if I bring up, there we go. So if we go to the studio base assignment, which, oh my goodness, it's not clickable. You guys notice that? It's not clickable? Anybody notice that? Has anybody tried submitting this assignment? Guys?
Sir, which one?
The studio base assignment.
It was
Maybe
working,
not.
except for like, well, we haven't done the last part of it, but it's been working.
Right. But I could swear I'd done this. Maybe I didn't. So let me do that now. Go here. Ah, it is working. So then F5. Oh, okay. It was just a fluke. Okay, so it is working, right? So what I wanted to show you is there are 3 things that you need to submit for this studio base assignment. So one of them is a rendering, which we just did, 2 views. The other one is the plan, which you would have already had from your design studio. And the third one is going to be a 3D floor plan. Now, the 3D floor plan can just be of the kitchen area. It can be of the entire apartment as well. But at minimum, you're required to show the kitchen area in 3D. So that is what we're going to look on now. All right. So let's move into that one.
Okay, so now that we have the images done, the next thing we need to do is to create a 3D floor plan. And we're going to create a 3D floor plan of just the kitchen area. Now, in order to do that, we're gonna go over to media and we're going to create another view. So let's use the Lumen render engine for this one. So I'm going to click on this one here. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it L for lumen kitchen 3D plan. All right, so the idea for this plan now is that, well, we need to go into our properties here, and we need to turn off parallelism so we can look above. And notice that if we choose to just hide the roof of our building here, so if I go to scene, click hide, then what will happen is our sun is coming in from the sky, which, I mean, it doesn't look that bad, but that wouldn't happen in reality. Right, you wouldn't have the sun coming into the place in a 3D floor plan. So let's say we want to do a 3D floor plan here. So there's a couple of things that we would possibly want to do to fix up this 3D floor plan. So let's say we want to do it of this area. So I'm going to turn on back that roof. So one of the first things we want to do is we don't want to have a roof. So we're going to switch it off, and it's going to be switched off for this view. So we're going to update this. The next thing that we want is we want the floor plan preferably to not be on a grass background. We want it to have no background. So what we can do to achieve this is if we head to our ambience here for this view, for our background here, what we want to do is we want to change this. So we're going to click this and go to library, and right now we're on outdoor, so we're going to change this to studio. And here we have more like setups for like models. So for example, studio is normally used if you wanted to, for example, showcase a shoe or some kind of object. You would use a studio environment instead of a grassy outdoor. But we're going to use it to our advantage here. We're going to pick this one here. We might have to download it and drag it over here. So now we're going to get a completely black background, which is fine. It may not be realistic in terms of if you were inside the space, but in this case we have a 3D floor plan, so we're not trying to be human height realistic. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this around. We're going to adjust in details. We're going to adjust the projection offset, so we're getting mainly a black background here. Let's update this. So if we kind of zoom out here, you can kind of see what this is doing. It kind of has a light like that, and if you rotate it, this is the effects of the light. So this is what that studio environment looks like, right? So for us, we want the background to be completely black. So let's go back to this view here. So we want the background to be completely black. Hold on a sec. Right. Now, the other thing we need to fix is, so we're going to update this. We don't want to have these lights here anymore. So we're going to turn these, we're going to hide them. So let's turn this off. We're going to hide that one. And we want to adjust our camera to be more of an orthographic camera. So we're going to go into ambience, light. Oh, we need to, when we turn this off, we need to update the scene. And then we're going to go to camera, and we're going to push the focal length all the way up and pull back on the camera. So now the view is mainly more orthographic. Pull back a little bit. It's still a little bit in perspective, but it's greatly reduced. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we do need to fix the fact that the sun is coming in towards the building. So there's a little trick we can do to fix that, and to do that we're going to go over to SketchUp. So in SketchUp we know that we have the ceiling that's here. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to create another ceiling using our, let's use a pen tool, right? And we're just going to create a ceiling here. Now the trick with this ceiling is we want this to be 100% flat. We don't want to give it any thickness. So there we go. So let's see if we can select it. Well, we're selecting that ceiling, so let's hide this. Okay, so here we go. So double click, And we're going to turn that into a group. And let's make one side a little longer, just so, okay, here, oh, hold on, we have something off here. That's the wrong ceiling, so let's hide that. We need to select this one. There we go. So we're going to just make this come out a little bit so that it's easy to select. So we're going to go to unhide all. Right, so now we have two ceilings. We have a flat ceiling here. Now the trick is, if I move this ceiling up, what you notice is that there's a white side and then there's a blue side, and Twinmotion does not recognize the underside of objects. So what does that mean? Okay, well, let's head over to Twinmotion. All right, so there's our object here, right? But if we look under it, there's nothing. If we look on top, then we see something. So with Twinmotion, you can't view the back of polygons, but it still blocks the light. So what that means for us is that in SketchUp, we are going to reverse faces. So now when we look from top in Twinmotion, we're going to be seeing through this surface, but the surface actually exists, so light can't pass through. So let's move this back down. Let's head back over to Twinmotion. Oh, let's click back our view here. All right. So we're going to hide our ceiling. And what you notice happening here now is that the light is not coming through the ceiling anymore. The ceiling actually exists, but because we're looking at the back of the polygon, we're actually seeing through the ceiling, but the light is actually, we need to block the light that's coming through. And right now the light is actually still coming through because you can see the shadow angles on the wall. If I head down, you can see that the ceiling is there, but if you look, you actually have sunlight coming through even though the ceiling is there. And that's because in the Lumen render engine, the light doesn't recognize back-facing polygons, see? So we have a ceiling there, and as soon as we go up, there's no ceiling, but light is still coming through. So let me click back our view here. Let me hide these, save my view. Now the way how we do that is by switching to path trace. Now what you notice now is that for path trace, light cannot pass through any polygon. So right now what you're seeing is you're seeing the light actually unable to illuminate inside these spaces because it is covered by a polygon. But because the polygon has reverse faces, you can see through it, but the light can't pass through. So that's just an interesting trick that you can use to get to do this kind of stuff. I'm going to save this view. I'm going to switch this off just a bit. And what I'm going to do is this light that we had here, I'm going to duplicate it, make it a copy, and I'm going to put it here. I'm only going to use it for illuminating the scene a little bit. There we go. So let's go back to the shot. Let's turn on. There we go. So now we're seeing it. So let's disable this one for this shot. There we go. So we only have this one enabled. And then what we want to do is let's increase the intensity, maybe 400. Maybe that's a bit too bright. So maybe. And what's happening here is that it is illuminating just this section that we see here. All right. So let me disable this. Light is still coming into this space. Let's see if we can, let's go over to ambience. So let's save this first. Let's go to environment. Let's increase our sun. That's too much. So we still have sunlight coming in, but the sunlight cannot pass through that polygon at the top. So you can actually see sunlight coming into these other spaces in the building here, right? That's pretty cool. Now, so let's update this shot here. Now, what we can actually do is for this, let's turn this back on. I think a better solution for this is we're going to have some ceiling lights to illuminate this space a little more. So we're going to make these a little bit smaller, maybe like that. And let's make the attenuation bigger. There we go. We're going to put a couple of these. So maybe we put one here. I'm going to put one here. Let's do an instance. We're going to put one in this room. So we're going to use this to illuminate the different rooms. This one here, we're going to make it an instance. But what we're going to do, let's make this a bit smaller. All right, so now we have all the rooms illuminated. So let's go back to this view here and let's go back here. So now we have all these rooms illuminated, and what we can do is maybe here's this one. Right, turn them down a little bit. No, up just a bit. All right, and you can see that if we go to the ambience here and we rotate our direction light here, you can see we're still getting lights into the space, but only through the windows, which is pretty cool. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to disable the additional lights in the kitchen area for this shot. So we're going to go to lights here and maybe light booster. So this is with the lights, without the lights. Yeah, we're going to turn off light boosters. So because this area was becoming a little too bright, that's there. We're gonna put some of these things in folders to make things a little bit easier. So we're gonna say move to new container and call this decor. Then this is going to be in light boosters. So we're going to turn that off, and this is going to be move to new folder. We're going to call this 3D floor plan lights. So we know that these are for the purpose of the 3D floor plan. So if we go back here, there we go, we can see that everything is illuminated. Now what we can do now for this shot is increase the exposure, the overall exposure a little bit, not too much. We didn't save the shot here. Let's turn off light boosters, turn off kitchen lights. Okay, there we go. So this is turning on the lights there. Let's save that. Then we can probably adjust our highlights using our local exposure. So this area is not blown out too much like that. And let's save that. Maybe we can do a more top-down view. Yeah, maybe a more top-down view like that. Let's update the view. Now, some other things that we can do to balance the light a little bit more is we can go over here to our light that we have for our floor plans. We can select all of them. We can enable shadows, and let me show you, this is without shadows and with shadows. So notice that with shadows you get a little bit more definition with the lights. Remember, these are all the lights that we put in the ceiling. Next, we want to, let's save that setting. Then let's go over to ambience and let's go to environment, and we want to notice this side of the plan is illuminated and this side is dark, and that's because of the environment that we have. If you remember, when we zoom out, we have this big globe, so we need to rotate it so the light is coming here. So if we, under HDR backdrop, we can go to rotate and we can rotate this till, so now this part is more illuminated. That's good. We can even increase the intensity if we want to, but not too much. Yeah, let's leave it somewhere around there. Then we can always increase our exposure a little bit, but not too much. And if we notice that any part of the image is burning, like it's too hot, we can always adjust the local exposure and choose whether we want to show our shadows more or not, or we want to decrease our highlights. So notice that we're decreasing the amount of highlights that are there. All right, now generally we can also increase or decrease all of the lights. Well, all of them are linked. So if we turn on path tracing, if we decrease or increase these 3D floor plan lights, they will increase in all areas. So we can actually balance this out. So if it's too bright, we can decrease them and they all will decrease at the same time. Okay, there we go. Now we can also go into the light settings and we can increase the edge angle. That is the edge of these lights that we have here. So notice if we increase it, we get more even light from the tops going down. All right, so we're gonna update this. So this is our floor plan. Now, the interesting thing is that when we go back to our other views, so for example, this view, the lighting is going to be a little bit messed up because we added additional lights in the scene. So let's go back up here. So we need to now say, okay, for this shot, we don't want this additional floor plan lights, and we need to save that. And we need to do that for every other shot. We need to turn off floor plan lights and save, because those lights have been added to all these other scenes. But we only need these lights, these 3D floor plan lights, in the 3D floor plan view. So we need to turn them off in these other views. There we go. So once we go to this view, the 3D floor plan lights are on, and then these other lights are off, which is great. All right. So now that we have that done, we can choose our rendering resolution, and we can even duplicate this shot and do one that's maybe closer to the kitchen area. So maybe we can have one like this, that, and for that one we can even save that. We can even go to environment and we can change our sun angle just for this shot. So maybe we want the sun to be going in a different direction. That's fine. There we go. And we also need this material here, so we need to just fix that little material. So let's drag that to here. Oops. Let's use a single object and let's drag that to here. So now that part there is fixed. All right. So there we go with that view. And then we have another view like this that's showing our 3D floor plan using that little trick. Now, the reason why we put this on a black background is because it becomes very easy to actually cut this out. You know, we can just erase everything that is black, and then we can place this on a presentation sheet very easily. So let's go ahead and render these two views. So we're going to go to export and save these two views. And okay, let's rename this one. Rename, and we're going to call it 3D floor plan. So there we go. Let's save and let's render. Okay, so let's take a look at our images. So here we go. So that's a lovely looking image, and the other view is here. This is the close-up 3D view. Oh, we could actually turn these spotlights off. That would definitely help, so we don't have these in that view. Now, of course, we could put this image in Photoshop and remove the background, but we don't even have to go that far, because Windows now has the ability to do that. We can just hit edit, and now that Windows has updated and have these AI features built in, we can actually go to erase background, turn on our background brush, and notice that it's cutting out these areas because it's also black. So we could put a light in there if we wanted to prevent this, or we can just choose remove mask, and we can actually just remove these areas here, here, and here. There we go. And choose save. Okay, so I'm going to save this as a copy, as a PNG file, and we're going to save it in the rendering folder. Say no. There we go. Great. So now we have a version. So once we remove that, let's not forget to choose remove, and now that background is now removed right from Windows. We don't have to necessarily go in Photoshop. And then we're gonna save it as a PNG with no background. So there we go. So now we have a 3D floor plan with no background, and we were able to get that in Twinmotion. From the same file that we used to get interior views, we can also generate a 3D floor plan as well. That is pretty cool.
All right, guys.
We were also created a okay, so
okay, just to wrap up.
okay, so we did it. We were able to go from Revit, where we created a floor plan, very precise. And from that, we were able to generate a BIM model with the basic outline of our kitchen. Then we managed to take that into SketchUp, and in SketchUp we added a host of other details like the designer sink and all of the handles and the particular type of cabinet doors, specialized equipment as the fridge, and we were able to really detail the design in SketchUp. Then we took that into Twinmotion, where we could now add things such as lights, and we were able to now add materials and realistic lighting, of which we were also able to generate a 3D floor plan as well as views. So all this done in this 3-step process using these 3 tools, each tool having a different purpose. So this, I think, is a great workflow that we can use whenever we want to do design work and we need to create a workflow where we can decide what tool is best for what design.
All right, guys. Any questions? So that was creating the 3D floor plan. All right. So you are going to create the 3D floor plan primarily for architecture, for computing. But of course, you can use it for your own portfolio as well. All right. But that's the part that that we would need. All right. The main key with the 3D floor plan is that little trick with the reverse polygons. You can really get it to look nice by using that little trick. So you are welcome. All right. Okay, so the last, yeah, I think we're doing good on time. So great. Let me just go into just putting in one more pointer with Twinmotion. Let me open this file real quick. Okay, here we go. To update this. Okay. By the way, guys, when is your final crit? Yes? Who is here?
I think
Well,
it's next week Friday, sir.
yeah.
When you said next week Friday?
Yes, the 12th.
Okay, cool. Oh, okay. All right. So, how much of us here have anybody here that built out their building in Revit? Or maybe I should say in the process of? In the process of? I just want to get an idea of how do you plan to produce the work? Yeah, what was that, Gavin?
In the process. In the process.
In the process. Who else? Joel. Are you here, Joel?
Yes, sir.
So how are you tackling it? You're going straight up in Revit, or are you only doing like the floor plans in Revit?
Probably just the something.
What was that?
I probably just do the floor plans in Revit. Not.
Okay, I catch a little bit of what you say. Okay, cool. Let's hear for some more. Chambers. Are you here, Chambers?
Yes, sir.
What's your plan?
Just mostly SketchUp. I don't think the lecturers like the Revit drawings based on feedback.
Okay, so in your production, what you're gonna be doing everything in SketchUp?
Yes, sir, mostly.
Okay, cool. Are you using? What about your plans? Are you doing plans in SketchUp too?
No, sir. Just a 2D software.
Oh, 2D. All right, cool. Let's hear from some more people. Sarto, what's your plan, Sarto? Evelyn? No? Oh? Okay. Do one. Addison.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's your plan for production for your final project?
Sir, I'm more than likely gonna have to hand draw this. So
Oh, okay. All right. You're going to do you're gonna trace your perspectives, or you're going to draw it straight out?
sir, I'm gonna draw it straight out.
Okay, including the floor plan?
Yes, sir.
Oh, all right. Cool. That's interesting. Who I don't hear from? Marville.
Si, senor.
What's your plan for your final production? How you going to balance the use of the different software or hand drawing?
Well, I'm still here trying to figure it out, you know. Definitely not hand drawing. It's just to dive deep into these different programs.
Right.
Because I'm
Well,
I'm an AutoCAD man, yeah?
well, so you can produce the plans in AutoCAD,
Right, which I've done.
right?
So now it's just it's to bring it over in the 3D programs and try to start to use it.
Okay, so for your perspectives,
Right.
so what? SketchUp, maybe?
See, I was fooling around with ArchiCAD for this the summer.
Okay.
But I weigh in my mind as it relates to I do it in
Debating.
ArchiCAD or I do it in Revit.
All right. Well, whenever you conceptualize your building, what format is your conceptualize in? Is it sketches?
No man, I've passed that. I've reached floor plans.
Right. So the floor plans for the units, fine. But
Yeah.
what about the form of your building? How do you conceptualize that? Is it in SketchUp or is it in hand sketches or?
Oh no. With my experience, I kind of know exactly where I'm trying to take it.
All right.
So I kind of use that a lot. And then I guess when I bring up what I bring up, in other words, I know exactly what I want, so I know exactly how to flip up floor plans to get exactly what I want.
Okay, cool. So now you just have to figure out what program you're
Right.
gonna use to do that.
To
Okay.
do exactly to do that.
Okay.
Because I know just to bring up the walls them and put in windows and doors is all fine, right? But
Yeah.
is that nitty-gritty part now where putting the different stuff, and then as I said, as you were showing today in terms of the whole rendering and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay.
still try to figure it out.
All right. Cool. Marshall.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. What's your plans for your production, your drawing production in terms of software use?
I think I'll just stick to Revit mostly.
Okay, so you plan to do what? Your floor plans and your building in Revit? Like your 3D view?
Yes, and then rendering in like Twinmotion or something else.
Okay, cool. You using SketchUp any at all in your workflow?
Yeah.
All right. How you plan to use it?
Just for the more detailed renderings, I'd say. Like if you want to show a certain view for the building. So.
All right, cool. All right, good stuff. Who else wants to go? Joshua, I don't hear from you yet. What's your plan? Joshua here? No? What about Tariq?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking to do the plans in AutoCAD and probably the sections as well, and then do the model in Revit.
Okay. All right. And Nikisha.
Sir, I'm entirely using Revit for everything.
Oh, Revit for everything, plans, everything.
Yeah.
All right. What you're going to use for your 3D views? You're going to do that in Revit as well, or
I was planning to render it in Enscape and just use Revit perspective and just sync it.
Got you. Cool. Webley. Is Webley here? Going once, going twice. All right. And Ansel.
I was gonna use a mix of Revit, SketchUp, and Twinmotion.
Okay. So you're doing your what? Plans in Revit?
Yeah, do my building in Revit, do everything 3D in Revit, and then use like SketchUp for more details and materials, and then put it into Twinmotion, well, for materials as well, and rendering.
Okay. Well, what I can say is, for those of you that are planning to go in Revit, the trap that you want to avoid, and I'm saying this now because I also fell into that trap. Well, not with Revit, because I didn't have Revit when I was in school, but I was using Autodesk architecture, which also has walls and windows and those things. The trap with a technical drawing program like Revit is that it's subconsciously forcing you to put in all the details. What type of wall is this? How high is it? What is it made from? What type of window is this? I need to configure this window. You know, it's like, what you have to try and do is try and avoid falling into I call it a detail trap. Because what you have to show for studio is not the nitty-gritty of windows and doors and these things. A lot of them is you need to communicate like high-level concepts of what your building look like. You definitely need a floor plan, you definitely need a section, but you don't need to be going into, for example, putting in like specialized types of doors in Revit, specialized types of windows. Like suppose you have an idea of this is the window I want to use, but then Revit doesn't have the window. So you say, all right, then let me go to Revit City or let me go to BIM Object or one of these places and I'm looking for windows and all this stuff. This door is not the door that I want, because what you find out is that when you draw the plans in Revit, everything kind of comes out boxy. You know, like boxes with little window holes in it. And you don't have as much flexibility to just push and pull a wall and stuff like that, because everything in Revit requires that you add all the details. So my recommendation is sprinkle a little bit of SketchUp with the Revit, meaning do your floor plans in Revit for those of you who are using floor plans, which I recommend, by the way. Even if you're just doing 2D floor plans, Revit is really quick with floor plans, hands down. Maybe arguably quicker than AutoCAD, but I'm not going to fight that battle. But definitely try and use your floor plans. Just drop in a window, door. Doesn't matter how the window or the door look. It can get your floor plans out real easy. Where things get a little tricky now is for the model. And what I recommend is, if you find that you're getting trapped in the detail trap, once you have your basic form of your model, carry it into SketchUp and just as IFC export and just drop on your boxes and windows and do anything specialized. Try and get those on directly in SketchUp because it's much easier. And I'll try to see if we can demonstrate that. All right. So all right, I got one more thing to show you before we go. Give me 1 second here. Let me bring up this thing. Okay. 1 second here. And we'll open this thing. All right, give me 1 second, guys. Let me update this thing. 1 second. All right. Now, so nobody doing any animations for final project, right? I suppose not. I mean, some of you are already doing stuff in Twinmotion. No? All right. Okay, so right before yeah, we got a little more time. I wanted to show you quickly for checkpoint 5, you're required to do an animation. Just a 360. You don't have to do any form of wild camera motions. You don't have to go inside the building. All you're doing is just doing a 360. Oops. All around the building like this. And the latest version of Twinmotion even comes with a tool that does this. But I'm gonna show you like the way that works with all versions, right? So all you need to do is bring up your media. And this time we were always adding images. Now we're going to add video. We're going to add video and we're going to click the plus. So this frame is where the video will start. So let's say it starts here. All right? And I'm going to click the little refresh button there. And what you want to do is go 45 degrees. So let's say I go this way. So this is 45 degrees. And I go and click a plus. So another 45 degrees. I go and click a plus. And I go another one. Maybe this time I might want to go up a little because I have some trees behind me. Click a plus. Another 45 degrees. Another one here. Maybe I'll get the tree in the foreground here. I think that would look pretty good. By the way, if you're having trouble aligning this, like, because you want to make sure the building is in the center, you can also go to your camera tool and use the alignment, but you don't have to. Just make sure it's generally in the middle. And here we go again. And here we go again. And that's it. So now, if I hit play, we have this view. And as you know, this is very fast. So all we need to do is to say, I want this to last maybe 40 seconds. And now when you play it, it's going to be much slower. And that's it. That's all you're required to do to submit. The way that you render this image, okay, maybe 40 is too long. Let me try 30. Right. All you're required to do now is to render this out. So you would go to export. And this time, instead of doing image, you wouldn't do any image, you would do video. And this is the video you just created. And you choose export. And I'm going to export that into my folder. And that's it. And that is how you render a video, guys. And it shouldn't take that long to render. This is taking like a minute. And then what you're going to do is you're going to upload that video in the final version, in the final checkpoint. Any questions on this, producing the video? Fairly straightforward. As I said, it would only take like a couple seconds to do. No? No questions? All right. So what I want to do is also give you some tips. Hold on, let me see here. Okay. Oh, look, the video is almost done. Well, let's take a look on that video first before we go to the tips. There we go. Oops. And that's the video. Now, what you do when you're doing your video, I want you to include at least one, I think moving object is a requirement. So meaning somebody on the porch looking out, some birds, a boat, just any kind of entourage that is moving. That's going to be one of the requirements as well. All right. And that's it. That's all you have to do for the final checkpoint. All right. So what I wanted to just throwing out some random tips here is like whenever a lot of the times when you do a floor plan in Revit. So for example, I'm going to use benefit. Look at this. Where is it? It's this one. Right, here we go. Here we go. Right. So imagine this project that we just did, like this kitchen project. And I'm only going to simulate this just to kind of get the point across. So let's say you have let's say you draw your unit like this and you say, yeah, man, this is my building model. This is my apartment unit. And you work out your floor plan in Revit. And maybe you have maybe a couple of floors. So I'm going to paste this. Go to my elevation. I'm gonna draw. Oh, how much floors are you guys doing, by the way?
I think we're allowed 3 stories.
Okay, 3 stories. Got you. So let me go up again. There we go. Okay, fine. Oh, it's because it's grouped. Okay. I'm gonna ungroup it. Just for demonstration purposes. All right, you don't have to do this is not a tutorial on using Revit. I just want to show you guys something real quick. I wonder why these never went with it. Anyway. Okay, whatever. All right, now let's say that you guys did your floor plans and you line them up in Revit. So yeah, you have a building, and usually, I would say, unfortunately, this is usually the result of, oops. I know what, this doesn't matter. I just put that there. So usually when you start to line up your stuff in Revit, it looks very boxy like this. And this is what I mean by the detail trap. When you're in Revit, it requires a lot of time for you to do push and pull and the type of architecture that makes your building really shines. Probably because you are designing in plan. So when you design in plan, sure, your floor plan looks nice and everything is laid out. But then when you start to look at the form of your building, it just looks like a stacked stuff. And then maybe at this point you're saying, but the building is just so boring and maybe you just have a slab roof or something. But you also need to finish for your studio project as well, for your final project. And I think it will take a lot of time to kind of work on the architecture in Revit of this building, like figuring out what walls am I going to push and pull and do stuff like that. So if you find yourself in this kind of situation where, okay, you have your plans, but your building is looking kind of boring, I would not try to fix that in Revit. Instead, I would go to export the IFC. Here we go. And you can use the default. You can use the default settings pretty much. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to just put it in. I'm going to make a folder and call it Tips for Studio. There we go. And I'm going to choose export. Then I'm going to jump into SketchUp. Now, everybody here possibly knows how to use SketchUp already from second year. And it's usually very straightforward. All right, so let's say you have your very boring building here. Not looking interesting at all. But now you're in SketchUp, you have a little bit more freedom. Now, hopefully, usually you have whatever precedents that you plan to use. And for me, like, I'm not going to get all complicated. I'm just going to use grab a precedent from good old Pinterest. And while you're here in SketchUp, because of the flexibility of SketchUp, you can quickly execute some push and pulls to get any kind of look that you want. So I'm just picking one at random here, guys, just to kind of demonstrate the point. Like, suppose you had a precedence that looks something like this, you know, then what you could start doing is just using the good old regular tools and just work on the facade only. So what you have to remember though is that you need to work in a group. So I'm going to double click this, create a group from it so that it doesn't stick to the other geometry. And then you can literally just build out by pushing, by pulling and pushing. Come on. And it's just a bit more flexible to do it this way. So for example, we can say, okay, maybe we have some, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool again. Rectangle tool is the tool of the century, guys. Very straightforward and simple. There we go. And then maybe this is on each level. Let's put one on the top as well. maybe I want these walls here to be a little bit taller. Now I can just go into the actual wall model itself that I exported. So let me explode it. You have to explode it a couple times, like literally a couple times. All right, there we go. Yes, as I said, you have to. Oh, hold on. I think we have to explode again. Yeah. Hold on. Let me see. Explode. Yeah, you got to explode again. Load. 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 Explode. And one more explode. I think this is. Yeah, good. So now you're able to push and pull these walls. So like maybe you wanted like this area here to be taller, right? Because we're building it out. We're kind of just building it out. You're kind of half designing. The other thing about SketchUp is that you can control your line work. So for example, I don't want to have a line here. I can just go into this group, click on the line, hide it. Go into this group, click on this line, hide it. So there you have everything smooth. Same thing for this. Right? And if you're starting to give you're building some character, maybe this section here comes all the way up. So I can just grab this and use my scale tool and carry it all the way up. Or maybe this is my elevator. Forgive me guys, I'm making this up as I go along just to kind of demonstrate that, especially if you want to build out an idea, you don't have to do everything in Revit. If you want to do construction documents, then sure. Right. So you could basically, and then anything like even shading devices. Maybe you wanted to add some shading devices. You can just build that out again. Group it. Copy this. Okay, I'm gonna stop now because I could just go crazy with doing all of this stuff. Sky's the limit with what I want to add in. Maybe this is a window here. You know what I mean? And then maybe this part kind of comes back in like this. I did say I would stop, right? But we're having so much fun, huh? You know what I'm saying, guys, is I don't know if you get the point. You can use Revit to do your plans, then take it into a program that's easy to use like SketchUp and just continue your design work from there. And then you can generate elevations from SketchUp directly, rather than trying to do a whole production in Revit. But at the same time, I wouldn't advise that you start in SketchUp from scratch, because then you have to build everything. And Revit is really quick when it comes to walls, windows, and the architectural elements. It's hands down very quick. All right.
All right, sure. Is it possible to do it on AutoCAD and then bring it over to SketchUp?
Yes, you can. But you mean to do the 3D in AutoCAD using like wall tool and those
No, just the plans. Just the plans.
Yeah, but I wouldn't carry plans into SketchUp for plans' sake. You mean the 3D? You mean carry the plans in SketchUp and then do the 3D? That's what you mean?
Right, sure.
I would almost, for architecture, I would if you're comfortable in Revit, because you see here, this is a basic plan in Revit, literally so basic. I still think that it is easier to just do up some quick wall tools in Revit than trying to extrude in SketchUp from scratch, because it's so easy to just click wall and literally draw. Oops, sorry, I'm gonna go here. Right, it's so easy to just click wall and any shape you want. You don't have to worry about the extrusion or anything, and just choose windows. Even if you don't choose the right type of windows, I mean, you can just drop in some random windows anywhere and a random door. Like, this is so easy. So I would recommend that you maybe do the trace work of your building in Revit and then carry it into SketchUp. Because
Okay, sure. Understood.
Right, building from scratch in SketchUp is no fun. You guys did it in DDM. You had to build a building from scratch. You remember that, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. It's way more easier. The fact that I already have all this, stuff to work with, and I can just go on the market, on the warehouse, download a window, and swap it out if I really want to go in depth. But there's so much push and pull that I can do here that will already just turn my big slab of a building into a nice building.
Well, sir, I can do the same thing.
All right.
Easy.
Good. Whatever you do, though, don't fall into the trap of building everything. Cause this is really what gets you. It's when, because in a BIM program, that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to get you to build everything, to work out everything. And that's good in the context of when you're doing a BIM model in your professional practice. But in this environment where you need to get out a concept, or get out an idea, or get out what's called design drawings, and design drawings is not documentation. Don't spend all your time documenting. All right? Please, especially if you have a documentation background, meaning you worked in a place where you had to do loads of construction drawings. That's not what they're looking for in architect. I guess you figured that out already after 3 years. That's not what they're looking for. All right, guys, that's enough blabbering from me. We don't have to meet for the other session because I think we covered everything in this session. So this feels like goodbye for now until I see you next semester. But before you go, the last class activity you have to do today is on the mirror board. I'll also paste the link in the chat. I want you to hold on. I want you guys to do this survey of the module. Every semester we try to improve the module. Second. Copy. Okay, here we go. Right, so there we go. That's the updated link right there. All right. So I also want you to, I'm going to paste it in the meeting chat as well. And I'm going to ask before you go, if you just fill that out, let me know how the module is. For example, Jadmar, Jadmir, what, in your opinion, what was the most challenging part of the module?
So you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
The most challenging part?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, probably. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
All of it? Or it was too easy? Well, the thing is, guys, like when I was in school, we still had 3D modeling, and I don't know if I can find it. Do I have it on my computer? I had it one time. Oh Lord. One time I spotted it and I sent it to my lecturer, which was now retired, and I said, hey, I remember when I created this in class. Let me see if I have it here. There we go. Right. Maybe I'm here. Yes, I have some. Maybe don't have these. These are so old. Oh my goodness. Work archive. 2004. Assignment. Yes, I'm just looking through some very old files, but anyway, but what I wanted to get to tell you guys is, oh, hold on, I think I found it. Yes. All right. Oh no, this is not it. This is horrible. But so when we did this assignment, we did it. We did it in AutoCAD, and everything was extruded, right? So there was no wall tools, there was no window tools. So 3D modeling is coming from far. Then eventually we transitioned to Revit, and at one point we were using 3D Studio Max for rendering, and then we transitioned to Twinmotion. So most of the transitions that we did is really a result of the feedback that we get. You know, I remember 3D Max was becoming a bit cumbersome to use, and because of that we pivoted to Lumion. But then with Lumion, there was the computers couldn't run it, and there was a lot of other challenges. So I'm just saying this to say, guys, that your feedback is like is what we use to make the course easier, and you guys are benefiting from the feedback that we got last semester, and because of that we kind of adjusted some things, and this is why we have the course today. Right? Marville, most challenging part of the course, what was it for you?
Sorry, repeat the question.
What was the most challenging part for this module?
Ah,
Everything was just so easy.
I wish I could have said that. It's easy. It's not hard. Yeah, but I think probably if it was a situation where we could do it step by step, you know, like when I did Revit at Navgar, where all of us in the room and the instructor does something, we are able right there and then to
Oh, so you mean in person?
correct. So
Okay.
it's a case where like so he's right there on the blackboard or on his big screen, whatever it is, and he's doing it right there, and all of us is in the lab looking at him, and then him carry to a point, and then say, all right, let me see you do that, and we do it, and then him move ahead again, and then say, you know, and so therefore it's a little more engaging to get it done, and you get to lock in.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting that you brought that up because, like, one of the things about the computing module is that when we used to have it in the lab, maybe like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, this before COVID, we used to have it in the lab, and what we find is that more and more students started to carry their own laptops. So nowadays people rely less on the lab. It didn't start out that way, but eventually it kind of ended out that way.
Right.
And then when it ended out that way, then there used to be multiple sessions for computing, and be like, yeah, but we have our own computer, so we no longer have to wait until the next session to use the lab. So then everyone started to come in one session, and that's what started the whole thing of we can merge the classes into one and then have it, because most people ended up having their own machines.
Right.
Then I started to, even in the lab, I started to record the sessions and play it, because you had students that said that they can't get everything in the lab one time.
Understand that.
So then when I left the lab, it's like all the information was left. You know?
I get you.
So then
But
we started to...
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And so I can understand and appreciate us having our laptops now, because I mean that's the order of the day now. And so the recording will then come in as a
right.
For,
so
for self you know,
continued learning.
Yeah, continuation, yeah. But you just, I mean, I would love to have sit down and kind of do things whilst you're doing it.
Right.
Stop and say, all right, so I see this, but then why if I did it this way, would it make sense? And you know, but now it's kind of almost like kind of like an autoplay.
Right.
And so we just have watch, and then by the time you stop and done and gone, and then to start doing it myself, the problem therefore is now trying to now take back some time to then put in to do this.
Right.
Because I mean, obviously, as you can imagine, you have other subjects, you have other things, and for me, you have life. So just trying to fit back the time to go through it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
A double-edged sword. Because I remember when we had the lab, so what we used to have the lab, and then I would record some things, not everything, not the entire class. But like if we were going to tackle something challenging, like to model a terrain, which we used to do in a different program, I would do a tutorial on that. And then in class, almost half the class wouldn't be able to still follow along in class because we run out of time, because we're kind of tending to everybody's, you know. So, but I don't understand why that's not working. We say, okay, we'll change that, we'll change. Then, so you have this kind of mismatch. And then at the end of class, I used to say, well, guys, I did a tutorial video. Here's the link. Go ahead and watch the video for those who didn't follow along or whatever. So that's where it started. And then eventually, well, COVID just put everything into high gear with it just being online. So now we have the opposite, where we lose the face-to-face engagement. But then we've gained, everything being digital. So it's like a double-edged sword,
Yeah, I get it. I
But
get it.
but we know that if we go back, if we had the classes physically, apart from the myriad of challenges with CSA's technology, with UTEX technology, the projector and the lab and blah blah blah. Apart from all of that, I have found that because there's a mismatch of learning speed in real time. So, either you're going to choose to go ahead and then persons catch up, and then you can catch up with a video if it's properly done, because that's the other thing. Videos that are poorly done, it's very hard for you to absorb it. Nowadays, all videos are top-notch. You know what I mean?
I get you. But also, what could also help is the fact that, say for argument's sake, you're talking about SketchUp, and you have a Gavin that is probably way more efficient in SketchUp than I am.
Right.
And whilst probably somebody who will stop you and say, hey, show me this, and probably, but probably I didn't even reach there, say it. I can tell to Gavin and say, Gavin, and Gavin just come and show and say, oh, yeah, man.
True.
So therefore, you have that blended help, really. And that would help
is true.
To kind of foster moving persons together to catch up.
There was at one point before, no, when was this? This was after COVID. There was a point in time where I think it was after COVID. Yes. After the whole drama had died down, where students did the classes in the lab. It was the time when we started having this hybrid. So it wasn't fully online, it was kind of a hybrid thing where you still physically went to class, but then the classes were hybrid. The classes were still online, but then you were still in a class. But that only lasted for a short while, because most persons just use the flexibility of online and just did it in their pajamas, I guess. So we've seen this, this phase shift. And guess what? That is one of the questions I ask all the time, which is why I encourage you, please share this with the rest of your classmates as well, so that they fill out the form, because it helps us to know what's the preference of most persons. You know what I mean? Most of my modules are fully online, and you know what? COVID is good for some things. COVID caused a lot of things to go online and kind of force us to get in with the technology. It also helps us with flexibility as well. You know what I mean? So yeah, double-edged sword. Anyway, guys, that is it for our final class. I think it was great. Please check your grades to make sure that you're handing everything. Remember, I said the latest by the 19th for everything, and I'll be submitting whatever grades I have. I think, yes, I'm going to be with you next semester in building information modeling, where we take Revit to an even higher level, right? So, and that is going to be online again, right? As a matter, all of my courses are now online, and some of them you will do with our other lecturer called Mr. Sean Johns. He does it kind of hybrid. He does some lectures online and some in person. But we're going to be, next semester's class will be your last pretty much class of being taught tools. After that, you're going to use the tools more freely to your best use. Rather than me saying, this button does this, and this button does that, and this button does this, right? We're going to do that one more time for Revit, a more advanced Revit course, Revit module. And then after that, it's going to be more, you decide what you want to do. All right, guys. So I will see you next semester. Have a good one, guys. Good luck with your final crit.
Sir, I need to ask you something private.
Oh, sure. So if you've done the survey already, then you guys are free to go. Take care. All right, Webley. Let me put you in a breakout room. While I do this, anybody else needs to speak to me? Nope. Nope. Going once, going twice.
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. All right, no problem. All right. I will come back and get you in a little bit then.
Okay.
Uh-huh.